I don't know about you guys, but I feel like Europeans should have just left me in the bush. Like, they really should have just left me in the bush. Like, nobody asked them for anything that they came here with at all.
Hi lovelies and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, you're welcome to Building the Verse. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload a video, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and also educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real MVP. Alright lovelies, let's dive into today's video.
Let's watch a little video together and see if it reminds. Colonizers talk the same. These are all talking points that Zionists use as well. It's not their land. They should have fought harder for their land. Who's to say the land originally belonged to them? That the colonized group must have taken the land from someone else. Germany has said that they are going to join Israel's side in the International Court of Justice. And Namibia released a statement saying they reject Germany's support of the genocidal intent of the racist Israeli state against innocent civilians in Gaza. On Namibian soil, Germany committed the first genocide of the 20th century in 1904 into 1908, in which tens of thousands of innocent Namibians died in the most inhumane and brutal conditions. And Germany has not taken any accountability for the genocide they committed. And the statement goes on to say that basically Germany continues to stand on the wrong side of history. And in this statement, the Namibian president lays out how Israel's committing a genocide. So President Genocide, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, reiterates his call made on the December 31st, no peace-loving human being can ignore the carnage waged against Palestinians in Gaza, and is pressuring the German government to reconsider its decision. It's abundantly clear to tell who the oppressed and who the oppressor is when we are seeing all of the colonizers line up in support of Israel and the colonized in support of Palestine. And especially Germany has no leg to stand on. Germany cannot morally express commitment to the United Nations Convention Against Genocide, including atonement for the genocide in Namibia, whilst supporting the equivalent of a Holocaust and genocide in Gaza. And that same rhetoric from white Namibians and Israelis in Palestine normalizes genocide. Free Palestine and free all occupied land.
I find it so funny when German tourists come to Namibia and they're like, oh my God, Namibia is so empty. The streets are so empty. Where are the Namibians? Germany, you genocided us in the beginning of the 20th century. 80% of Namas and Hereros were wiped out, Germany. You put Namibians in concentration camps, Germany. You had Namibian women cleaning the skulls of other Namibians so that your scientists could test whether we are the same species, Germany. We've been negotiating with you for years to return the skulls of the people that you killed and exterminated in Namibia, Germany. You refuse to pay us reparations, Germany. That's where all the Namibians are. That's why we're empty.
Did you know that most of the land in Namibia is still owned by foreigners, and Germans in particular? The beautiful landscape and the surrounding mountains that you see here are all part of a 32,000 hectare big farm owned by a single German family. That is the size of Munich or Disneyland in Orlando, Florida, and this is just one single farm out of many you'll find across the country. Starting from the Namibian-South African border up to Namibia's capital Windhoek, you will see that the land left and right is fenced. These are all private farms. During my travels through Southern Africa, I learned that the descendants of the settlers who own most of the farms have inherited so much wealth, they have not even spent the money their grandfathers have left behind. I always admired Africans for being able to forgive what has been done to them during slavery and colonialism, for being the most welcoming countries in the world, even embracing descendants of colonizers as part of their nation. But witnessing with my own eyes that their country's independence has not ended the dispossession of their land and racist views some settlers still carry on in the present towards them, left me with so many questions, especially with the question, are we maybe too forgiving? What do you think? Let me know in the comments.
So the one thing Germany was not expecting to come out of South Africa's case at the ICJ was the fact that the world would now finally come to learn about the mass atrocities that they, the Germans, committed against Africans. The ones that they want you to forget, the ones that they will not acknowledge or atone for. how the Germans between 1904 and 1908 were in Namibia, how they called that land German Southwest Africa, and then proceeded to systematically wipe out 100,000 people of the Herero and Nama communities. Namibia, who are South Africa's neighbor to the north, comes out with an official government statement and says to Germany, Germany, sit down. We know what you did. And they give dates. They say in January of 1904, Germany, you invaded our land and did what you did to our people. And now today, in January of 2024, the same Germans want to tell us what is and what isn't. The same Germans want to be some kind of moral authority that the whole world should get behind. The same Germans are siding with the people who are committing mass atrocities today. These people are unrepentant. They are arrogant. Germans were also in Tanzania. They called it German East Africa, committing mass atrocities. All these things have to come to light. We have to learn them, and we have to throw it in their face and tell them, look what you did. We remember.
So I saw someone say, why don't they ever teach African history in our schools? And I had to pause, because it's not that they can't teach it. It's that they don't want to, especially when it makes Europe look like the monster that it really was. So let me put you on to something you probably didn't learn in school. Germany's first genocide didn't happen in Europe. It happened in Africa. The year was 1904. Germany had colonized what we now call Namibia. And when the Herero and Nama people resisted, not violently, just refused to be erased, Germany responded with brutality that'll make your stomach churn. They poisoned wells. They pushed entire communities into the desert and cut off their access to food and water. They built death camps. They chained people up, used them for forced labor and medical experiments. Even beheaded them and shipped their skulls back to Berlin, all in the name of research. Not as evidence of war crimes, but trophies. Sound familiar? Because it should. Germany tested their genocidal playbook on African soil before the Holocaust. And then they exported that same cold, calculated violence to Europe decades later. But nobody talks about that, likely because Black pain isn't considered historic. It's considered disposable. And don't let anybody tell you this was a long time ago. Germany didn't even acknowledge what had happened until 2021. And their apology came with no real reparation, just a PR stunt and a press release. They still haven't returned all the stolen bones. They haven't paid back the families that lost generation. They still haven't put this genocide in German textbooks. And the US, silent. Because when the West says never again, they really mean never again to white people. But when you ask why African history isn't taught, they can't teach you the truth without admitting that they're still protecting the people that committed the crimes. Germany practiced genocide in Africa. They perfected it, then pretended like it started in Europe. We're not supposed to remember, we're supposed to move on. But memory is resistance. And I'm here to say their silence doesn't protect them anymore. We remember everything. And the ancestors, they haven't forgotten either.
Everything that the Germans did to the Jewish people, they practiced it in Namibia by committing the first genocide of the 20th century, but no one talks about it because the victims were African. Germany colonized Namibia in 1884 and called it German Southwest Africa. As usual, such original names. The land and cattle of the Herero and Nama people were systematically taken and they were relegated to very tiny reserves, right? So in 1904, the Herero and the Nama people revolted against these land grabs by German colonizers, and for this reason, the Germans decided to target the Herero and Nama people to commit the first genocide of the 21st century, which lasted from October 1904 to 1908. So after the revolt, on morning of 11 August, at the Waterberg Plateau in Namibia, 50,000 or more Herero men, women, and children woke up to their houses being bombed by the Germans and also using machine guns. Thousands of Herero and Nama people were slaughtered, and those that managed to escape ran away into the Kalahari Desert, whose correct name is Kalahati in Setswana, but white people couldn't pronounce it, or Maheke region, which is extremely dry. So tens of thousands of people died of thirst and of hunger because the water holes were poisoned by the Germans. This was the condition of the few who escaped. Those who somehow didn't die were enslaved in these concentration camps. And so after this, there was a general that was assigned to unaliving the Nama and Herero people, and this guy was called von Trotha or whatever. And so he allowed the indigenous people to run away into the desert, but then he made outposts of hundreds of kilometers long where there were German troops preventing the Hereros from escaping the desert, basically making them die or either be enslaved. On 3 October 1904, von Trotha basically declared an extermination order against the Herero and Nama people. I quote, "I, the great general of the German soldiers, send this letter to the Hereros. The Hereros are German subjects no longer. Any Herero found inside the German frontier, with or without a gun or without cattle, will be shot. I will no longer accept women and children. I will drive them back to their people, or I will let them be shot at. Such are my words to the Herero people." So, during this 80% of Herero people were unalived. They were initially 80,000, but then they were cut down to 16,000. And 50% of the Nama people were unalived. Their population went down from 20,000 to about 10,000 people. And this is only the deaths that are recorded. So it could honestly be worse than that because this genocide wasn't documented that well. So the unaliving was executed under the slogan, to cleanse, to hang, to shoot, until no one is left. Yeah. At some point, they stopped directly unaliving the indigenous people because this German settlement depended on Africans being a supply of cheap labor. So it wasn't out of the good of their hearts that they stopped shooting at them. So in response to these demands for labor, there were prisoner laborer camps that were set up. These were concentration camps that were established throughout the colony, specifically in coastal areas like Swakopmund and Shock Island. Shock Island is the most notorious one. The rates of indigenous people in the Swakopmund concentration camp was around 50%, and on Shock Island it was around 80% unaliving rate. So according to the official German 1907 annual report, out of the thousands of indigenous people sent to Shock Island, by April 1907 there were only, I quote, "only 23 people left in the camp who were still fit enough to work." Yeah. And in these concentration camps there were no bathrooms, toilets, or sanitary facilities, and so any waste from the enslaved people was left to rot out in the open, and this led to outbreak of diseases that especially spread among the children. Because, mind you, they were kept restricted in these camps, unable to leave. So, yeah, they couldn't get food, they couldn't get water. They were only given a few grams of food every day. In addition to the unaliving and the concentration camps, women and girls were raped all over Namibia, indigenous women to be specific. There's a woman, for example, called Louisa Kamana, who was the daughter of a chief called Zacharias. This woman was unalived for refusing to be raped by a white German guy. And guess what? When it was taken to court, he was acquitted. And later on, he was only given 3 years. And he only got those 3 years. Actually, it only went to court because she was the daughter of a chief. Prior to that, literally not a single white man was ever taken to court for raping a woman, even though it was known to be.
Video about how Namibia spoke up and condemned Germany for their support of that one country in the Middle East. Because for those of you guys who do not know, Germany decided to defend that one country in the Middle East in front of the International Court of Justice as a third party. Namibia used to be a German colony and also one of the places where Germany did commit one of its many genocides from 1904 to 1908 against the Herero and the Nama people. Something that is also not much talked about in Germany. You kind of mention it in a history class. For some people, for others, they don't even even hear about it until they research it themselves, and then it's, swept under the rug. But it's still a genocide, and something that the German state recognizes as such, that they did commit that. And Namibia said, how dare you act sorry for what you did to us, but then support another country doing it to another group of people. They called out the hypocrisy, and I'm so glad about that, but unfortunately, under that video, you also have Germans who are very much right-wing, some might even call them neo-Yazis, who are also supporting what, Germany did back then in Namibia. And sadly enough, even decades after colonialism, there are still Germans with that mindset living in Namibia. And the following clip will show you exactly how much they learned from their history.
Today, white Namibians make up 6%. Well, before them there, who they took the land from. So what Norbert said next is something I heard off camera from many Namibians of German descent.
I don't think it's right to call it a genocide. It was never spoken about, and then Germany or some Germans came and said, or brought the theme up again and made a political thing out of it. Leave us alone. Leave our cultures alone. We live in peace. We know how to live with each other. It's not necessary to stir and always say it's genocide and this and that, and it must be sorted out.
Does this type of settler mindset sound familiar to you? Because it definitely sounds familiar to me. I want you to really think about what Norbert is saying. He's saying that he doesn't think we should call it a genocide. In Germany, it is recognized as a genocide. It did happen. It's not a question of, oh, did it happen, did it not happen? It is one. He just doesn't want to call it as such, because then, he is not complicit in keeping up the same mindset that the people back then also had, the ones who committed the genocide. This is the settler mindset that exists in a lot of former colonies in Africa. I'm not saying every single white person who's a descendant of colonizers thinks like this, but a lot of them do, and they show it. It is what is bred into these people so they grow up and can keep up the system that keeps other oppressed and them at the top. Girls disbelieve in thinking that anybody could want their land back after they took it illegally from indigenous people by colonizing and unaliving them through a genocide. And it's even more ironic that it comes from German people, because Germany has also been in the news for another thing. And yeah, I know, Germany is just doing great right now. Right wings, neo-Yazis, and different people from different parties and business people, millionaires, have been exposed for secret meetings in which they discuss wanting to remove all foreigners from Germany. Doesn't matter if you have a German passport or not. Doesn't matter if you've been here for generations. If you are not ethnically German, the end goal is to remove everybody. They want to create a standard by which they decide whether or not in their eyes you have assimilated enough to German culture, language, whatever, so you can stay. If you fail the test, you have to go. And according to them, they want you to go to North Africa. Every single one of us, no matter if you are from there or not, should go to North Africa. And while I don't know whether or not these secret meetings are happening all over the world or not, but in a lot of European countries, you have this type of mindset that these people, in order to be here and be allowed to be here, they should assimilate 100%. They should lose whatever culture they have from another place, and they should become like us. If you are not exactly like us, you don't think like us, you don't talk like us, you don't act like us, and you do not look like us, you can leave. It's just so ironic, because when in the history of humankind has a European country assimilated to the place that they colonized, or the people have assimilated to the place that they migrated to? Do you think these German people in Namibia have assimilated to the ways of the Namibian people? No, they went a step further and even colonized and unalived these people. When have German, English, French, Spanish people ever taken on the culture of the country that they went to? You guys aren't scared of mass immigration and people who look like me, other religions or whatever. You're scared of what you guys have been doing to other countries for centuries being done to you. The difference is that the immigrants that your country is, by the way, created by destabilizing a lot of the places all over the world for multiple decades, don't want that. They don't want to take over. They don't want to colonize you. They just want a better life since their home country is destroyed because of you. So if you want to stop mass immigration and people from other cultures coming into your places, maybe tell your governments to stop hurting the countries that they're from and stop bombing them, stop funding the wars, and stop colonizing them. A few days ago, I made a video about how Namibia spoke up and condemned Germany for their support of that one country in the Middle East.
When people talk about the strategies of the 20th century, they often begin in Europe. They speak of the wars, the devastation, and the moral lessons learned, but very few mention the southern edge of Africa, a place that still carries square scales beneath it, deserts and dunes. Namibia, a nation whose beauty hides unspoken history, a story that refuses to disappear no matter how much silence is placed over it. Many visitors arrived and marveled at how empty the land feels. They drive through endless plains and quiet towns and ask, where are the people? But that emptiness is not accidental, it is the echo of a history that changed the shape of the population forever. In the early 90s, when this land was called German Southwest Africa, European powers competed for African territories as though they were commodities. They drew lines on maps and claimed ownership over lands that have sustained people for generations. Germany joined that race late but aggressively, taking control of this territory in the late 90s. Entire communities were confined to restricted zones, driven into the desert, and left without access to water. Others were taken to the camps where they faced harsh treatment and exhaustion. European records from the time even document the collection of human remains for so-called scientific studies. Women were forced to clean and prepare skulls for exports to Europe, where they were studied to satisfy racial theories that dehumanized an entire people. That was more than a century ago, yet the silence around it remained until very recently. The word Namibia rarely appears in the war textbooks next to the phrase systematic destruction, though it deserves to. For years, descendants of those affected have asked for acknowledgement and for the return of remains that were taken across the sea. They have asked for genuine repatriative justice, not symbolic statements, but material restitution and recognition. The response has been slow, hesitant, and sometimes dismissive. In 2021, the German government publicly recognized what happened as a form of genocide, a step forward in diplomatic language, yet many Namibians feel that it was not enough, because wars without repair still feel like denial. To this day, the ownership of the land in Namibia remains one of the most unequal in Africa. Despite independence in the 1990s, vast stretches of farmland, fertile, fenced, and guided, remain under foreign control. Primarily, descendants of the same settler families who arrived more than a century ago. Imagine driving from the southern border near South Africa all the way to the Windhoek, the capital on both sides of the half highway. Kilometer after kilometer, the land is fenced. Each section belongs to a private owner. Many of those owners trace their ancestry back to the colonial period, when entire regions were redistributed under foreign authority. One family alone owns more than 32,000 acres, an area roughly the size of Monchi. That's just one property. There are hundreds more. Meanwhile, many Namibians live in small settlements or a communal land with little access to the fertile areas their ancestors once cultivated. For them, independence did not bring the land back, it only changed the flag flying above it. This imbalance is not just an economic issue, it's an emotional one, a wound passed down through generations. How do we forgive when the imbalance continues? How do you heal when the same soil still whispers the story of loss? And yet, Africans have showed a capacity of forgiveness that continues to astonish the world. Namibia, like many African countries, did not expel settlers after independence. They opened their arms instead. They offered citizenship and inclusion, hoping that shared nationhood could replace historical guilt. But recognition without repair is like a handshake over a crack in the ground. It hides the gap, but it doesn't close it. Foreign visitors often say that Libya feels peaceful, untouched, and even empty. But the emptiness is the sound of resilience of people who survived when survival was almost impossible. It's the sound of ancestors who endured even when their names were erased from official records. Every stretch of desert holds memory. Every mountain holds testimony. This is not emptiness, it's endurance. Today, Libya's leaders have joined South Africa in the reminding the world that selective morality has no place in justice. When South Africa brought its recent case before the International Court of Justice, few expected that it would reopen old wounds from the German colonial era. Yet it did, because when Germany positioned itself as a moral authority on global conflicts, Libya responded, "You cannot preach justice while ignoring your own past." The Namibian government released an official statement reminding Germany of January 19 1904, the month its troops invaded Hirolim and Nama territories. It was a vacuum accusation. It was a detailed historical reminder. Dates, place, actions all led bared. The message was clear. We remember present itself as a nation of progress, engineering and democracy, and indeed in many ways it is. But history does not vanish with development. A nation can build skyscrapers and still have shadow beneath them. And when it comes to Africa, those shadows are long. So, when German tourists come to Namibia and say it's so empty here, they may not realize they are standing on the soil that once had thriving communities, villages, hubs, and family networks that disappear under foreign expansion. The ironing is haunting. The very reason for the emptiness they marveled at is rooted in their nation's past actions. Some of those stories are kind, curious, even empathetic. But empathy without education can easily slip into ignorance. To truly understand Namibia, one must understand what happened between 1904 and 1908, and those years shaped every generation that came after. To understand the fence along the roads, the quietness of the plains, and the cautious tone of local conversation about land, one must know that land is not just property in Africa, its identity, its ancestry, is where names are buried and songs are remembered. To those land is to lose land is to lose the map of who you are, and so when foreigners own most of the best land, and imbalance is not just economic, it's essential. Many Africans, including those in Namibia, continue to question whether forgiveness has been too generous. Has kindness become a weakness? Are we too forgiving of those who never truly said sorry? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones, because reconciliation without accountability risks becoming silent, and silence always benefits the oppressors. Travelers who visit Namibia today see beauty, and rightly so. The dunes of Sozuve glow like fire under the setting sun. The skeleton coast stretches endlessly where the desert meets the Atlantic. But beneath the sand lies stories of resilience, of communities that rebuilt themselves with almost nothing left, stories of people who still wait for the return of ancestral remains, still wait for a fair redistribution of land, still wait for the world to recognize that justice delayed is dignity denied. La Libya emptiness is not emptiness, it's evidence. Its evidence is the unspoken testimony of what happens when a people are displaced but refuse to disappear. And even as foreign families inherit farms so large they have never walked their full length, La Libyans continue to build new futures in towns, villages, and informal settlements, determined that history will not repeat itself. Perhaps the question is not whether Africa are too forgiving, but whether the world is too forgetful. Because forgetting allows injustice to repeat itself under new names, development, investment, partnership. If the land remains unequal, the story is finished. Maybe the true art of remembrance is not just to recall what happened, but to insist that ownership, wealth, and dignity be balanced again, not through vengeance, but through fairness, not through bitterness, but through honesty. The desert winds of Namibia carry more than sand, they carry memory. They whisper the names of Hirolim and Nama ancestors who once walked that soil freely, and as long as that memory remains, history will never be fully buried. It will continue to rise like dust after every passing car on those long, silent roads. Because silence, no matter how deep, cannot erase the truth. And La Libya's truth, though painful, is also powerful. It is the story of survival, of endurance, and of a people who withstand, still speak, and still remember.
And if you have watched up to this extent, thank you so much for all the love and support. Don't forget to please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. Alright, lovely. See you when I upload the next video.